We are Duck Hunting Fanatics, knee deep in the duck blind. If it flies, it dies. Only Duck Hunting Fanatics know what it feels like to see a brightly colored drake mallard cup its wings and soar towards your decoys. It's what we do, and it's what we love. Duck Hunting Fanatics, with boots on the ground, eyes in the skies reports. And we get it from professional duck guides all across the country. We interview them for their top tips and tricks from their years of experience from the duck hunting blind. This is Duck Hunting Fanatics, and this is Eric Wilkes.
Greetings, friends and fellow duck hunting fanatics. Eric Wilkes here with another episode of Knee Deep in the Duck Blind. And today we have Amos Medford with us today. He is a self-proclaimed digital creator. You can see his Instagram profile out here, and he grew up hunting. And I know just kind of getting into duck hunting. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But Amos, thanks for being on the show with us, man. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man. I appreciate the invite on the show, Eric, and I'm a fellow podcaster. So if I can help you get an episode out, I'll be glad to. I guess I did click that I'm a digital creator, but that might be a little bit, stretching it a little bit.
Nah, man, digital creator is perfect because, as podcasters, we kind of are, and you've got lots of good photos and posts I see on your Instagram. So, I think it's good. I love the brand that you're creating with, Wannabe Hunting. And I love what you're kind of starting. I got a chance to briefly listen to some of your podcasts, and yeah, I'm definitely happy to be on the show. Give us a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into talking about some of your hunting experiences, because I know you just recently shot your first duck. So I definitely want to touch on that too, and hear about your first experience out duck hunting.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And I am from Northeast Florida, and still live in the general area where I was born. And growing up, loved being outside, loved sports, did a little bit of fishing in high school. And my dad definitely got us out, shooting some guns, had BB guns from however young I was, 5 or 6 or something like that. But, my dad actually wasn't a hunter, and none of my uncles really hunted. Neither of my grandfathers hunted. So I don't know how I got interested in it, but I definitely got interested in it pretty early on. I was probably watching Daniel Boone cartoons and the, old baby.
Yep.
And, I was just like, I want to do that, and fast forward a bunch of years. One of my real close friends growing up, his dad hunted, and they started getting into it, when they were teenagers and stuff. And fast forward even beyond that, getting out of college and married and everything else. And that same friend, his dad, they have a hunting lease. They've had them up in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And they got one close to home within an hour of here. And they gave me permission to come on their lease. And that was kind of my real gateway to do hunting. This area of Florida just isn't super abundant with walk-on public land. So having a spot to go really, catapulted me into being able to get out there and hunt. And, as far as my hunting career, if you want to call it that, about 5 years ago, shot my first doe. That was my first harvest overall. And the following spring, I killed a really nice Osceola gobbler, and during spring turkey season. And then this past fall, I killed my first buck. And so that was pretty cool. There's a pretty decent story on that. I'll save that for later if we get to it. And then since I, had met my real big goal of killing a legal buck, the rest of that kind of late winter season, I was trying to get a duck, and finally got a duck. In between there, I started the Wannabe Hunting podcast just as a way to learn more about how to hunt. I listened to a bunch of hunting podcasts, and it gave me the opportunity to ask the questions that I wanted to ask and the way I wanted to ask them. So that was kind of the motivation there, and really just kind of create a family-friendly podcast, but one that still kind of got into all kinds of hunting, whether you're going out west, whether you're duck hunting, deer hunting, doing stuff here in Florida in the deep South, or whatever. So that's kind of the idea behind my podcast and how we got where we are today.
That's awesome, man. You know, you've had, sounds like just a number of firsts this last few years, which is great. Especially for the guys that are listening that are maybe new to hunting and they're just kind of getting into it. It seems like we get a lot of beginning hunters. What would you say in that experience? I mean, what was the hardest part, especially coming from a family of non-hunters? Like, what was the hardest part about getting into the sport and actually kind of getting your feet on the ground and, you know, get really moving things forward so that you could actually get out and physically go hunt?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I kind of held off for a long time because I was a little bit intimidated. And I think that the information now that's out there is so much better than even 5 years ago. I've found multiple websites, at least a handful of podcasts that are really geared toward beginners. And you can do hunting classes now. I mean, it's crazy. Either that stuff wasn't there a few years back or I wasn't finding it. But the thing that intimidated me the most is two things. One was the cost of gear. For some people that's a big deal. For some people it's not. But just kind of being intimidated by that. But there's ways you can get around that. Pawn shops, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, whatever. I bought a bow a few years back, and I've actually upgraded since. But the first bow I bought was like $40 on Craigslist. Some guy dry fired it, broke the string, and I got a new string on it, and got a super cheap bow. So there's ways you can work around that. But the other thing is the information. I initially found information that was just over my head, as far as I was hearing stuff like find buck bedding and set up there, and I was like, I don't know, I'm trying to find like a trail or something. But I think those are the things that probably intimidate people the most. Once I got a chance to go and I kind of learned more about what I needed to expect, my biggest fear, you might say, was like, okay, if I'm out here deer hunting and I get one, then what am I going to do? I was out there with no four-wheeler. I don't even think I had a drag rope, or anything like that. I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. Since then we've come a long way, and thankfully the deer that I've been able to harvest, I've had help dragging, help cleaning. Well, actually one I dragged myself, but anyway, so that's been a blessing. But beyond that, as a duck hunting podcast, I will tell you right now that a duck or a turkey is way less intimidating from that aspect if you're just getting into hunting. You don't need to be a butcher to figure out what to do with a duck or figure out what to do with a turkey. So those two might be really good options if you're somebody who's never hunted before and you're starting from square one.
Yeah, and that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that, because I hear more and more stories like yours where people are, they didn't come from a background in hunting or a family that hunts. They didn't necessarily grow up in it. And so it's awesome, number one, that we have the opportunity as Americans to enjoy that freedom. And it's awesome, number two, that you personally took it upon yourself to just sort of figure it out and get out there. I think with the evolution of the outdoor space, really even over the last 2 years, to your point, the resources the landscape is changing. So the resources are becoming more and more available, especially with like YouTube. They're fairly, I don't want to say they're gun friendly and hunting friendly, but they are fairly friendly and more reasonable. And they are letting some of the hunting shows and stuff that are out there come on, and they do offer a lot of tips, and they don't mind it as long as you've got the proper disclosures. So I think the information is definitely out there for someone that's maybe interested in it. I would encourage anyone, just go try it. Cause man, I'll tell you, every hunter that I've ever met, like the first time you get that first kill and you do all of the hard work to get it, and there's a certain amount of accomplishment that comes with that, and you're hooked. I mean, you're hooked because you know where that food came from. You're getting it and you're doing it yourself. So, for those of you that are maybe thinking about it, just go do it. And we've got Amos's Instagram page up here. Go out and check it, or just Google Wannabe Hunting Podcast, and you'll find him. You can go out and download him, or go out and connect with him on Instagram and just ask him any questions as a beginner. Now, I do want to hear this. I do want to circle back. I do want to hear this buck story. Tell me about this first buck, and then I'm going to share my first buck story as well, because I think it's exciting, and I think it's important for people to just kind of grasp that especially for people that are new, that are just getting into hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been on a few years. It'd been a few years since I had killed a deer. So I was early season during the archery season. I was out there with my bow, very nervous. Had a doe almost walk up behind me under my stand, and then got my wind or something and took off. And so I was just after whatever was legal in a sense. But come the black powder season, I had my friend's dad that I mentioned earlier that gave me permission on their lease. Very few people know this, and I don't think many people that are in our families, I guess, will listen to this, but not many people know this. But he bought me a black powder rifle last year, and just to give me an opportunity to get some more days in the woods, for that muzzleloader season. And so I was out there with that gun, and I was actually at my wife's grandparents' property. I was not at the hunting lease. I was at their property, which is only about 6 acres. And we've got some trail cameras out. We have some great bucks that come through there. But small property. And I had talked to another guy at church, and he has killed a buck 4 of the last 5 years. I think on the muzzleloader opener, which is usually around October 25th in Zone C of Florida. And he said 4 of the last 5 years at daylight, he's grunted, and a buck has come in, and he shot him. So I was out there a few days after that. It was actually October 30th. And so I just tried it. It was starting to get light. So I gave 3 or 4 grunts, and sure enough, heard the buck out in front of me in the woods. I was kind of sitting right on the edge of the woods. So sure enough, heard him, gave it a couple minutes, gave 1 or 2 more grunts. And then I saw him cutting through a trail where it was kind of, the undergrowth wasn't quite as thick. I could see him. And he walked out right in front of me. I think it was about 12 yards, and shot him. And of course, with a muzzleloader, there's a cloud of smoke, and I'm like looking around, and he darted back into the woods and popped out just on the other side of the neighbor's fence, and fell over in their field. So I had to kind of wait and negotiate the going and getting him, but everything went smoothly. But it was quite an experience. I was by myself. I actually dragged him back under the fence and lifted him into the truck bed by myself. So that was interesting. Work. Obviously it's not a Wisconsin deer, but I don't know what he weighed, but I'm pretty sure there was some adrenaline involved.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the adrenaline's still kind of rolling. Literally, it definitely helps give a little bit of a boost.
No question. So, that was awesome. Just amazing. And it was, I was like running across the field, and I was trying to wait because I wasn't sure if my wife's grandparents were awake yet. I didn't want to bang on the door or whatever, but I was so excited, calling people, texting people, the whole deal. So it was awesome. It was awesome. And
That's awesome, man.
we're
Okay,
still,
congrats, man. Thanks for sharing that story. Hopefully that gives a little bit of encouragement that you can do it, even if you didn't grow up in it. You can learn, and it's always exciting when you get that first buck down. And my experience is similar. I was sitting on the corner of a property in a little finger, on a friend that their family farms, and so they don't get a lot of time during the beginning of the season to hunt while there's still crops growing, so they have to harvest their crops. So I asked for permission to go hunt, and I sat in this little corner on a finger, hoping something would cross a field, and I got pretty lucky. The neighbor actually came out to hunt, and as the neighbor was walking through the woods, bumped the buck out, and the buck ran right down the field edge, right along the finger, right to the corner of where I was sitting. And it was still a pretty long shot because the wind wasn't in my favor, and it was one of my first times really deer hunting, and didn't really understand the whole you got to play the wind thing yet. But you do. I learned real quick because that deer stopped short at about 50 yards, and I have a shotgun, which and it's a slug. It was an old slug barrel shotgun. Nowadays, everything's got a scope on it. I was still just plain sights, shooting smoothbore slugs, and it took me 3 shots to hit him. And then I hit him, and he stood there and looked at me. So I shot him, I hit him again, and he ran about 45, 50 yards right where the neighbor had just walked through and killed over. And so similar experience in terms of like going over the fence line. And then I'm like, oh man, now I got to wait because he just walked in to hunt. And now I got to sit there. I can see my deer laying there, 30 yards over the fence line. And I'm like, oh man, I can't do this. I can't, so that, yeah, same thing. It gets a little bit frustrating because you're like, oh, you want to do is go retrieve your deer. I just remember like the excitement and the adrenaline and everything kind of rolling. And fortunately it all worked out. Once the neighbor saw the deer, he could actually see the deer that he saw it kill over from his stand. And he waited a little while, and then eventually he ended up walking up to the fence line and just waving me over and saying, hey, go get your deer. And we had a good conversation and kind of chatted. And same thing. It was very smooth, but really a cool experience. It wasn't anything, fancy. It was just a little, 4-point rack buck, but it was legal. And I was super excited. And, of course, I had the same thing, call my dad and my family and let everybody know, like, hey, man, I got one. Like, this is awesome. So I was hooked from that moment on. And I think I was 15 or 16 years old at the time when when that all went down. And I've been doing it ever since, man. So, fortunate. I'm a little bit different in the fact that I kind of grew up hunting, squirrel hunting and all the different hunting that I could do growing up as a kid. My dad, I tell everybody, my dad, when I was old enough to walk and talk, had me in the woods and had me doing something, whether I was being bait for him to shoot squirrels over my head or what have you. But I think the experience that we share is the same, right? It's part of why we're there. So for anybody that's maybe thinking about it, just go do it. Like, just get into it. And if I can help you, or if Amos can help you, feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're happy to guide you and point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I definitely echo the just do it, just try it. That's definitely the route to take. Not to say don't do research, but I would encourage anybody to do it. It's such an amazing experience in so many different ways. I don't remember if we were recording or not, but we're talking about family a little bit. And I mean, I got my second turkey this past spring, and I grilled the one of the breasts, and like just seeing my kids like gobble down that turkey.
Yeah, buddy.
Grilled and cleaned and cooked, like everything. I mean, there's nothing like that. Like, until you experience that, you just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the key. So it really is. We get great joy and great pleasure out of it. And I get great joy and great pleasure out of introducing my kids to it. And, my kids all are going to love to hunt. My son, he's 6 now, and he loves going out with me. I mean, we sat in the turkey blind. He sat in the deer blind with me. It's a little tougher to bow hunt with a kid, but definitely during the rifle season and the gun seasons, you can slip into the blind with them and kind of minimize their movements. But, there's that experience just taking out, and even if you don't harvest an animal, it's still awesome just to see their reactions and, see how much they enjoy it too. So.
Yeah, I've got a few years to go, but I'm looking forward to all that for sure.
It's going to be a blast, man. You just wait. So, well, hey, I want to thank you again for joining us today, Amos. Definitely, I'd love to have you as we get closer to deer season. I mean, I hate to say this, it sounds crazy, man. We're already talking about deer season of 2022, but it's like right around the corner. So it's getting to be exciting. Would love to, just have you on another episode. We'll talk a little bit more strategy and what to look for and so on and so forth. And we'll kind of gear this little segment for deer hunting towards maybe some of the beginners that are just getting into it. I'd like to do that. And I'll definitely hop on your podcast as well. I grew up doing this and been doing it for over 20 years, deer hunting and all sorts of hunting. So love to connect with you on the Wannabe Hunting podcast. For those of you that are listening, again, just Google Wannabe Hunting podcast, or he's on instagram.com/Wannabe Hunting podcast, and go connect with Amos, fire questions at him. Again, he's got some great experiences, and he's really still just kind of getting into it over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's still for all the trials and tribulations and struggles that he had to go through that he kind of touched on today. Maybe some of you are experiencing that as well. So reach out to him and he'll be happy to guide you and point you in the right direction. And if nothing else, connect with you and give you some words of encouragement, because sometimes I think we need that, especially if you don't come from a hunting background or don't, come from a hunting family. I know it can be very difficult, but you heard at least a glimpse into Amos's life and what he's gone through. And so if you can relate, go connect with him and just ask him some questions. He'll be happy to oblige.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Eric, and I would love to have you on and definitely get into some stuff on the old Wannabe Hunting podcast. And totally agree, man. It can be done if you're thinking about getting into hunting. Do some research, ask people questions like Eric, and you can even shoot me a question. It's hard for me to think of myself as having experience that I could point somebody in the right direction, but yeah, to somebody who's literally at square one, I guess I have done more than that. So maybe I could help a little bit. I'd be happy to if I can.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for being here. And I want to thank our listeners too for tuning in and listening to another episode of Knee Deep in the Duck Blind. Not as much duck hunting talk today, a little bit of deer hunting talk, but I know most of you guys that are out there, you hunt multiple species. Most of us that are hunters, we, according to Amos, right, want to be hunting, or rather be hunting. That's where we are. So we appreciate you guys tuning in and listening, and we'll look forward to having you guys on another episode of Knee Deep in Duck Blind. Until then, everybody have a great day.
We are Duck Hunting Fanatics. Knee deep in the duck blind. If it flies, it dies.